Hi there, welcome to this build of a 45-inch wingspan Quiver. Now the Quiver is a scaled down version of the iconic 1930s Quaker. And we're building the Quiver from a great set of plans which we've downloaded from the OuterZone website. And there's a link in the description below if you want a copy of those plans. Now in this video we're going to be covering the tailplane assembly, so the tailplane, the elevator, the fin and rudder, and we're going to be covering them in tissue, a lovely Japanese Asuka tissue which I've got from Free Flight Supplies, and there's a link in the description below that will take you to a site where you can buy that. It's a UK site. Now in the previous video we got the items that we're going to cover in tissue today. We got them covered in a laminating film. And this is a 38 micron laminating film that comes in a 320mm wide roll. It's really thin stuff and it acts just like covering film. It's got its own glue that's heat sensitive, it shrinks, it stretches, it's really nice to use, and it's very, very cheap. I paid £19 sterling for a 150 metre roll, so it really is cheap. So the reason we're putting this laminating film on before we cover it in tissue is for strength. It really gives the structure quite a lot of strength compared to just having tissue. Now the design that we're doing is very similar or the same as the 1930 Quaker, and you can see from this advert here it's a really nice design. It's scalloped along the wings, and it's a light pattern on the front and also on the front of the tailplane. You can see the scallops, and it's also a light design compared to the more dominant colour at the back. Now that advert is in black and white, so we couldn't tell the colour that it was, but this is kind of my interpretation of it on the main wing. I've done the lighter colour as on the advert on the front, and this lovely red on the back. And we're going to follow that through to the design on these items. And you can see here on the tailplane we're going to have that light scalloped pattern, whereas that kind of transposes or shifts to the fin where it's actually dark on the front. So anyway, it's going to be an interesting design. I was a little bit kind of hesitant or reticent at how this would look with the dominant colour on the back rather than on the front, but it's really grown on me and I love it. So the first thing we need to do is to make some templates similar to the ones we made for the main wing. If you've seen that video, we need some templates to cut out the tissue and the pattern of the tissue so we can start applying it. Right, I've done myself some templates for the tailplane and for the fin. Now we don't need to think about the elevator or the rudder because they're just a solid colour. Now I've drawn around the tailplane and the fin on a piece of card, and then I've just drawn where I think the scallops ought to be, using the ribs for the points of the scallops and the old is it 1936, 1937 plan of the Quaker for kind of inspiration on how it should be drawn. And I've cut that out, and we've got to have a yellow front and a red back. So we're going to put the yellow on first, and then we'll put the dominant red over the top of that. So when we cut this out on the tissue, we need to well, I've left enough here on the front so it's just right to wrap around the front of the tailplane. But when we cut the back, I'm going to cut that generously away from the scallops so that there's enough to have a nice seam as this, or a nice overlap as we drop the red on top of that. So, and the red we'll just cut nice and accurately as shown on the templates. Similarly with the fin, we've got the two colours, but it's actually transposed. The dominant colour, the red, is going to go on the front and the yellow on the back. So the yellow we will cut generously to allow for the red to overlap onto that. So I will get the tissue cut out now, and then we'll have a look at putting it on. Right, well, I've got the pieces of tissue cut now and we're ready to start applying it. But just before we do, I'll just show you this, a mistake I made. It's always good to learn from mistakes. When I cut out the yellow first, I forgot to think about the grain. And I don't know whether it shows up very well on the camera, but the grain is running this way for the tissue, the red and the yellow. And when I first cut the yellow, I was trying to maximise the use of tissue, and so if I lay this out how it was going to go like that, the grain is actually running across ways, and the same with this piece as well. The grain was running across ways, and it just wouldn't have looked right. I mean, looking at it now, it jumps out at me and glares this piece that it's just wrong. So hopefully you can see that. Now I'll put these pieces of tissue somewhere safe, and we'll set up these to start putting on the yellow, because the dominant red goes on last. Right, I've taken a bit of time now just to make sure I've got this tissue lined up just where I want it to start putting it on, and you can see I've left just enough here to wrap it round and here without the need to trim it, which will be ideal, and here just enough to wrap round the back. So I'm going to spray it with water now and get it nice and flat, and make sure again it's absolutely where I want it, and then I'm going to polyurethane it with this Wilko clear matte polyurethane. It's a water-based polyurethane that is really nice to use. It doesn't smell strong, it washes out in the brushes really easily, and it's diesel proof, and I also use this with my petrol spark ignition engines, so it's a good product to use. Now I'm not going to go through the whole procedure step by step like I did with the wing. If you want to see this in more detail, then go back and have a look at the video where I'm covering the wing with tissue, and you'll see it step by step. So I'm just going to get on and do this now, and we'll have a look once this is done. Right, I've now been cracking on, and we've got the top of the tailplane finished, and I'm really pleased with how that's looking. Still got the other side to do, which I'm going to start any minute now. And you can see this is a little bit opaque, but once you get the tissue on the other side, it will give it just a little bit more density and colour, which will be really nice. So we've got the fin done as well, and I'm pleased with how that's looking, and it'll be good to get these together and see how this starts to take shape. I've also done a little bit of preparation on the rudder. There's a bit in the cutout there which goes over the elevator, and I thought if I just line that first, it'll be a lot easier then when I come to cover this. So we'll do that in a bit, but first we're going to get the tissue on here. And I think with this tailplane we've got a peg there, and I will probably cut the tissue into two pieces and put the two pieces on separately. I think that will be easier than trying to cut a slot out, because at the end of the day we need this central portion here to be nice clear balsa, so that it will glue down onto the fuselage. And the same on the top here. We'll cut this out eventually, this to allow, when that's on there, to have balsa to balsa contact for the nice strong gluing. So I will get on with this now, and we'll have a look once it's done. Right, well I have decided to cut this into two pieces. I thought I'd just quickly show you. So I've got that one piece cut, and I've just lined this up and put the ruler up against it, and I'm just creasing that now so I can see where I need to cut to make this piece just the right size. So I'll get on now anyway. I just thought I'd show you what I was doing. Well, I've now got the tail assembly completely covered, and I'm really pleased with how it's gone on and how it's looking. I still have a final coat of varnish to put on here, and at the moment you can see it's gone on really nice. It still has though a very flat matte appearance, which actually is quite nice, but I'm going to finish it with a silk or a satin finish like I did on the wings, so it'll just have a little bit of a sheen, not a gloss, a little bit of a sheen, and it'll just make it perhaps clean a little bit better than the oil from the diesel. But I think that is looking really nice, and like I say, I'm really pleased with how it's gone on. And I've really enjoyed the process of making the templates. It's really easy to do, and just to cut out the tissue and get it on is, I find it quite relaxing and quite, like I say, quite an enjoyable process. Now this covering has been a real journey for me, because I've been using the design of the original 1936 Quaker for this basically scaled down version of the Quaker, the Quiver. And I felt I've had mixed feelings about the dominant colour, the red on the back of the wing, but that really grew on me when I did the covering. But it's to say, with the tailplane, having the dominant cover on the back, I wasn't sure about that, particularly having the dominant colour on the front of the fin, because if I had designed this, I would have probably gone with the dominant colour, the red on the front and on the front of the fin, so that it actually kind of swept back and tied in, whereas it doesn't like this. But actually, it's really, I've set out and I've done this as a plan, and I've really enjoyed how it's come together, and I really like the design now. The colours, I've chosen the colours because the original pictures I had were black and white, and I wasn't sure what they should be. So I've done something nice and bright, and I am really pleased with the results. But you know, there's just one thing that we have to do now, and we have to get it all on the fuselage and have a look and see how it looks. So hopefully the tailplane will go on without having to remove any of the tissue and laminating film. I think that should slot in. I won't slot it fully home because I don't want to keep taking it in and out until I'm ready. I really need it to be there. So we'll get the wing on. Now, is that in camera? Yeah, more or less. There we go. Wow. This is a really bright covering, and we're certainly not going to lose this in the sky, but you can see how that is looking. And like I say, this design and the colour scheme has really grown on me, because like I say, I was slightly apprehensive at the start, but I'm really pleased with how it's taken shape. Now, I said at the beginning of this video I wasn't going to show you the technique of actually putting the tissue on. And that's because I've covered it quite extensively in the past, and if you want to see me putting the tissue on the wing, where I do show the process, the techniques used, then have a look in the description below, and there'll be a link to the video where I'm putting the tissue on the wing, but also to another video where I'm covering the tailplane of my Diamond Demon with a similar or the same process. So hopefully you'll see those and find those useful. So I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I hope you enjoyed seeing this develop as much as I've enjoyed doing it, and I hope you'll come back and see how we get on in developing and pulling together this lovely vintage Quiver. Thanks very much for watching.